to the Cinementalists. Noun, plural. Definition, those whose love for movies runs so deep, they can't help but do a podcast about them. Hosted by Colton Robertson and Joseph George. Hello everybody and welcome in to the Cinementalists. Today we begin a new month with a new franchise, Indiana Jones, something deeply special to me and my friends here. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the first one up. It was released on June 12th, 1981. It has a story by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman, written for the screen by Lawrence Kasdan, and directed by Steven Spielberg. I am Colton Robertson. I am joined by Joseph George. What's up, homie?
Oh, what up, what up? Always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And back like he never left. Our first guest on the Cinementalists, Kyler Barnett. What's up, homie?
Why did it have to be snakes?
Why did it have to be snakes? Yeah, no, I'm excited. This is one of the most deeply important series of movies to me. I absolutely adore them with all my heart, and I'm so excited to be digging into them with you guys over the next few weeks. Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is, for me, one of my favorite and one of the best movies ever made. I think it's everything that the action-adventure genre is supposed to be and can be, and I think that Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford are a duo that we are not like to forget anytime soon. KBZ, I know these are important movies to you. How are you feeling after this watch of Raiders?
Man, I watched these about a year ago, like pretty much close to right on the dot a year ago. And even just in like that amount of time, it's still just amazing how like every time I watch these movies, I just feel like I take a new appreciation for something, or, you know, I'm reminded of something different from my childhood. These movies have a special connection to me. George Lucas franchises as a whole are just super important. Like, my dad connected me with Star Wars at a very young age, and then shortly thereafter, my grandpa got me into Indiana Jones. And so, like, just this lineage through, like, my dad's side of the family, like, all the way to me, and, like, how it's just manifested in this super nerdy, like, just, I eat this up. I love Indy. I love Harrison Ford. It's perfect.
It doesn't get better than this. Joe, you are a relative compared to me and Kyler, not an indie guy. Not because you don't like him, but just because you never seen him. How are you feeling about Raiders? How many times have you seen this? Was this a second viewing?
This is, number 2. Just first time for the 52-year journey back then. Very different movie watcher I was, because I'm watching it now, and I don't know how I didn't fall in love with it the first time I watched it. I think I had good things to say, and I don't think I had anything bad to say, but
no.
Hello. I watch it now, and I'm like, this is my dream to be Indiana Jones now, you know, like this, like a legitimate, like, I want to put like plans in place to have this be like a plan B or C. Like, I just become a professor that's obsessed with archaeology so that I can go out in the world and like maybe discover some shit and kill some Nazis if it comes to that.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice.
But no, yeah. So I'm in love with this one. I think, I don't know. Is it peak of the franchise? I don't know.
That's for you to decide, you know. It's pretty widely considered the peak. It's pretty widely considered the best. I adore all 5 of the movies. I adore all 4 of the Spielberg directed ones on a different level than I do the final one. Although I do, you know, the final one's caught a lot of flack, and I'm excited to get to it because I believe that'll be a first watch for you, Kyler, right?
Yep.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I saw it in theaters a year ago today, as of recording, not as of release. And
I feel so bad too. Here I am. I'm talking about how like these are so important to me, and the newest one that came out, I still haven't seen.
Well,
but,
hey, I can't judge you for that. There are a lot of people who loved the Indiana Jones movies who opted out of the last one because Spielberg's not attached to them, you know?
That wasn't my like line of thought or anything. It just was, you know, life gets crazy and low-key things get shoved to the back. But I promise these movies
I
are...
get it. Oh yeah, I'm excited because man, and that's to say this is my favorite of the franchise. However, you ask me on certain days that I've watched, The Last Crusade specifically, and I might go, you know what? That might be my favorite. The Last Crusade's
Man.
also so fucking strong. So I'm excited to get to that one,
It's
but we are here to discuss Raiders today.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, can it get better than this? I'm like, because I'm watching every scene, even if it's just an exposition drop. I'm like, it's still just incredible to watch. I'm riveted. But
I personally think Joe's going to come around to one of the next two more than this one. Personally,
I think Joe's no, he has not. I think Joe will like The Last Crusade.
I think between the addition of some different cast members, not that like anyone in this one is like losing points, but there is a notable in the third movie, a notable character, which I'm sure Joe probably already knows, but just in case I won't.
Yeah, no, we got
that's how little I know.
To be a great surprise.
No, that is how little I know.
But I mean, like, just in every movie, like, speaking of which, the original trilogy specifically, there's so much like difference in what each movie does. Like, they're so unique, and just like everything's always on point. George Lucas and Spielberg, the effects work, it like, as you got to think, as the decade goes on and they're making these movies, the things that George Lucas has learned and figured out how to do, the way the technology of the times had developed, there's some very cool stuff that happens, like effects wise, in all three movies, but especially as time goes on. That like I really have a tough time feeling like you won't come away from one of those two just absolutely in love.
I think like my money is that you'll love The Last Crusade, but wow. I adore this movie. And speaking of the effects, there's some groundbreaking shit in this. And maybe not groundbreaking, but like it's utterly unbelievable to the point where if you're watching this as a child, you might be pretty fucking scared. And like the melting of the Nazis' faces and the explosions of the heads and the dead bodies that come creeping out of the corners and stuff. Like I love that stuff. It looks like the effect. One of my favorite effects that I've always noticed, but like, God, I fucking loved it this time around was, when the staff of Ra shoots the beam into the little model of the city and shows you where the Well of Souls is, and it glows there, and it shows Indy, and he's just like he's amazed. I love the effects work in this movie. It's unbelievable for the time.
Yeah, the opening. I mean, talk about like dead body. Like the opening of this movie, I feel like is just, it almost iconic. Might be my scene. Like, I don't know. It feels kind of wrong to go with it, but it's so iconic to introduce him in this way that, like, at first you don't like there's like a betrayal already between the group, and he just like whips the gun out of whoever that dude's hand is, and then they finally get in there, but like the passing all the booby traps and all of these things like is sick, but then the actual betrayal of Alfred Molina, which is, kind of funny.
Yeah. That was him? That was him?
Doc Ock, yeah.
I totally was, oh my gosh, I thought it was, and I was like, there's like, I don't know if I'd seen anything with him dating back that far, and I was like, there's no way that's him.
That's Alfred Molina.
And
that's crazy.
Like, I love, it's not his actual real dead body, but like the effects work of him like being stabbed through whatever that trap was, whatever you call that spike trap, and Adios, whatever, I forgot what his name was. Let's see, Satipo. Satipo, Satipo.
Oh, Satipo.
Satipo. Yeah, I thought it was Sapito as well. It kind of, I don't know. It didn't sound right, but no. I mean, the opening was just so already incredible. I don't know. It just gets you into the world
it's so
right
iconic,
away,
man.
And,
like, there's a series of shots in the opening of this movie that you've seen. Even if you have not seen the movie, you've seen these fucking images, the boulder and him kneeling in front of the golden monkey and stuff. And, all that stuff. I mean, one of my favorite shots when it came to favorites, aside from performance and character, which are Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. picking a favorite scene, line, or shot is like picking a favorite child. I don't fucking know, man. I love every second of this fucking movie.
Yeah. Can I just pick the movie as my favorite scene?
But yeah, the shot I was going to talk about was his after he whips the gun out of the guy's hand and he steps into the light, and that's our hero moment. You know, like this is the movie star. You know, this is the man. I've talked about that with you, Joe, a few times. How directors used to introduce not only characters but actors and make them feel like they are important. And this is one of the pinnacle examples of that.
I'm so glad you guys have both touched on like the very first thing I typed up for like my notes, things that I wanted to talk about or whatever, was literally both of you guys that you just said. That first 10 to 15 minutes, it's like it's just like you said, Colton, like back then they used to have that kind of like first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, some movies would dedicate to, like you said, like here they are. And I don't know if any movie just nails it as well as they do. And there's so much. One thing I love about it is it's like a slow buildup. And I know I said 10 to 15 minutes, and maybe that's not slow. But for those first like 10 to 15, he's borderline silent. You don't hear him say a word almost until he finally like gets inside. It's very like stoic, like, and then all of a sudden you see the charisma start building. You see like this guy being built up as this like bad like that's just the only way. I couldn't think of any other words. Like this guy is like the peak of like as a kid, this is a guy who you're like, oh my gosh, that's who I'm rooting for. Like off the bat, like you're like, this guy's
that's who I'm rooting for,
guy,
and that's who I want to be. Like
exactly.
There is,
it's like,
when it comes to the 80s action hero archetype and what it becomes, it makes Indiana Jones all the more impressive because he's not the ultra macho muscle man like Stallone or Schwarzenegger or these dudes who crop up. What makes Indiana Jones special is how human he is. Yes, he's good looking, yes. And they play that up a couple times. The charisma, he's intelligent. They make it very clear that he's smart. He's sensitive. He's afraid of things. Like they make all those things clear within seconds. They make all of that clear within the first 15 minutes.
One thing about these movies that like I don't know if any, it's like I can only identify it with this character and this actor in Harrison Ford. Like I can't think of anyone else that can like create this sort of like feeling in or whatever, but it's like he's so chaotic. You said human. He's like human. There are times where like he's just chaotic and like you can relate to that so much because it's like, oh, like, yeah, he's handling himself just about as frantically and chaotically as like anyone might in the situation. He just has that dog in him enough to figure it out from that point. But
there's
like
that
his
point whenever he's
inflection
talking
on the voice.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. He just inflects his voice and he like screams in this way. It's like, I hate to compare it to this because it's not quite, but like the way that only Tom and Jerry can do that like signature scream. He can yell words and things with like a level of fear and like, I don't know, just
urgency.
Figure it out. Like, yes, like Jock start the voters. Like, no one else has like, I can't think of anything as singular as that. And it's so, it's like you said, it's human, it's relatable. It's like,
it is, man.
There's chaos. There is like all of that stuff.
It's really fascinating to have expanded my horizons to older movies. There was a point when Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark was like, this is my favorite old movie, and now I'm like, well, that's hardly an old movie, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And that's, I say that because the influences are undeniable. And on the other side of Spielberg's most recent work, The Fabelmans, it recontextualizes everything in his filmography. And knowing the affinity he had for old westerns and action serials and these adventure films, the way that him and Lucas both had that. Lucas was also big on the serials and the westerns and all of that. Like they wanted to create their Bond. They wanted to create their James Bond. That is what they wanted to do with Indiana Jones. But they didn't want to get trapped in a bubble. And they obviously made him... I'm not a 007 guy. I haven't watched nearly enough James Bond movies, so of course I feel this way. But Indiana Jones to me is much cooler. And I absolutely adore Harrison Ford as the last of his kind. There is nobody you can really point to post Harrison Ford and go, yeah, he's a Harrison Ford type actor. You know what I'm saying? Like, Harrison Ford is incredibly singular in a modern context, but diving into older movies, there's a degree of Humphrey Bogart. There's a degree of Gregory Peck, and the likes of Cary Grant and all these dudes who were big in the 30s, 40s, 50s. Like, he so clearly emulates a bygone era with in a modern context. And I think that that's what makes him such a timeless movie star, is that he's been able to transcend the bounds of what we typically think of as a time a person comes from, you know? Like, when I mention Humphrey Bogart, you go, his name's Humphrey Bogart. You know, that guy's from the 40s.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's you say Harrison Ford, that could go from the 60s to the 20s. That could be any time. And I feel like this being set in the 30s and him being that guy, I think that that's purposeful, you know, like, that he is emulating actors from that time is a result of his talent and a result of his natural charisma, but the natural influences that came upon Spielberg and Lucas in the creation of this movie. And it's really, really cool to see, because, like, one of the other things I love, and I've every single time there's a romance, I'm gonna talk about the fucking romance. It's only natural. I love Marion Ravenwood and Indiana Jones. One of my favorite on-screen duos of all time, and they have such a screwball comedy chemistry. It reminds me of Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn. Joe, we watched What's Up, Doc recently. You remember that?
Ooh, very okay.
That's the vibe they have, you know, like, that's the screwball comedy chemistry they have, and you're bottling it in this action adventure package, and you're genre bending with horror and comedy and all this stuff, and you're creating something truly singular that is fucking exciting and fun, man. I
wonder if the post Fableman's watch is why I'm, like, super in love with the movie now, because I did kind of have the Spielberg thoughts every now and then. I'm like, wow, Spielberg is making, like, he has to be having a blast on this movie. Like, this is, it has to be the coolest shit ever. And like, putting himself into that character, like, I feel like Spielberg wants to be Indiana Jones, because who wouldn't want to be? And then getting to direct that, you know, and with Harrison Ford, it's like this perfect mashup of a movie that he could want. And in the beginning, like, Kyler was saying how, like, stoic he was and how, like, heroic, and, like, you know, he has some spiders on him, he just brushes them off, and then Alfred Molina has, like, 500 on him, and he just, like, treats that as no little, you know, that's something light. But then, you know, he gets out of the cave, collected, but then, like, when he's finally running away from, like, the massive army of, I don't know what those the wood, you know, people who live there, the native people
there. Yeah.
Whenever he's running from them, and then he's finally screaming, you know, like, start the engine. It's like the first time you see him is kind of, like, vulnerable, and then he gets in the cockpit and he's like, a snake, like, you know, I hate snake, you know, it's like, you know, and, like, the guy's
like, oh, that's my pet snake, Reggie. Yeah, like, okay.
And then the next time you see him, he's a professor, you know, and it's like, oh, like, how normal of a dude could this be? And that's why I think, like, I just attached to him right away. I don't know. I've recently just been on an archaeology just hype, and I don't know, just down the rabbit hole recently. So I don't know. This character was it fueled a lot of things. The Spielberg, the archaeology, just wanting. I don't know.
Ford.
Harrison Ford being hot, having a girl come. All of your students are women because you're just that hot, and they don't care about your class. They just want to see you every day. So that's pretty funny. But no, I mean, yeah, it was an insane way to open the movie, and it's partially why the opening might be my favorite, you know, scene. But it is kind of like picking a favorite child, because I don't know.
There's just so much good stuff in, like, the little thing. Like, I've never had a movie who like just punches you in the mouth and tells you from the get go, like, this the type of shit we on from start to finish. Like
Right.
the quality in every little minor detail. Like there's so much to love in those first 15 minutes. The pacing in the film, like the pacing and filmography in the first 5 where they haven't even made it in there yet. Like the score builds all of that up. Like it's mysterious. You don't know where he's headed,
John
what he's
fucking
about to end
Williams.
up in.
God.
And then you finally see Indy and it's like close shot, it zooms in on his face right
Dramatically
as he's
lit
about to
and
speak the
yeah.
first time, and every little detail, they get into the cave or tunnel or whatever, and the tarantulas, and it's like the tiniest score. It's just like little like light keys on the piano. Just it's haunting, like chilling, like makes your skin crawl because of the tarantulas. And then that score combined with like what Joe said, Indy not giving a shit, like it just builds him up as this badass. But then all throughout the movie, they weave in this trope of like, oh, he's so badass, so cool. And then you have moments like what Koro mentioned with the Staff of Ra, where it's like total childlike wonderment and like fulfillment of like, oh my gosh, I'm as close as I've ever been to this, life altering emotional, achievement. Joe with the snakes, where it's like deadly afraid after not caring about giant tarantulas. Like all of those things happen 10 to 15 minutes, not the Staff of Ra, obviously, but those kinds of tropes and things that just build up this movie in a way where it's like, it sits you at the edge of your seat from the moment you get in. And just movies like that are just, they don't come often, I guess. I can't think of many that nail it like they do so quickly, so early.
It's rare, man, and we're talking about those first 15 minutes when he's escaping on the plane, essentially, is when I decide that's the end of that sequence,
Yeah.
To give credit to John Williams, as, we probably don't need to give John Williams much credit, as he's the most awarded man in the history of the Academy. But the dude, the score is fucking unbelievable. And obviously the indie theme is to have created themes like Jaws and Star Wars and Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones and Superman, and to be so thoroughly confident that there is, like Harrison Ford has said, that theme follows me around everywhere. Everywhere he goes, if he's there, they play that theme. Like that is what they do. And like, there's a reason for that, man. Like the first time that true thematic motif flares, whenever he's running away and he swings on that vine out into the water, and you get that da 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 da, and he's swimming and they're firing the arrows. He gets into the plane, and I absolutely adore it. And every time it flares up when he's on the boat at the end of the movie and they're all cheering him on, they're like, yeah, my boy, when he's riding the horse, trying to chase them down. And like every time that flares, you just know it's something heroic, and it's so cool. I love the way that the music can communicate that to you. And John Williams, man, just the GOAT, just the greatest of all time. And I absolutely adore him for this movie, and all his movies, really. But goddamn, the score is just so good.
Assembled the movie maker Avengers. It's like, George has his weaknesses, but they're counteracted by everyone else who's there. Like
this is the best thing George Lucas can do to be involved with a movie.
Yes, just have the creative
come up with the story.
Yep, that's it. And then
let other people do everything
let
else.
The good people do the work, and just come up with the universe. He's got the juice. He's got the creative juice. We know that. But yeah, I mean, John Williams making the music, Spielberg, like having these characters like be their character. Like it's just everything is firing at every maximum potential that it could be.
Level.
And it's and I don't know. I don't know how I didn't realize this at first, but a new appreciation on this watch, that's for sure. Like, I mean, every scene, because even right after that first 15 minutes, after he's been his professor, he sits down with those CIA, U.S. government, whatever agents they are, trying to get just info on the whole thing, and even that, like it's just him telling them about the history, whatever, and even like
they say
that
Tanis
scene,
and the way he looks at his boy and he's like, oh shit,
they know what
Tanis.
Tanis
Oh
is.
god
And he's like,
damn.
so what's
Oh
Tanis
yeah.
to you? And he's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
only the fucking, it's like the most important shit of all time. And yeah, it's
Yeah,
just,
and then they're like, "Well, you sound like the perfect guy. You're an expert on tennis." He's like, "No, actually, I'm not." And like after all that, where he's gone on this rant about being so passionate about it and everything, and he's not the expert. Abner Ravenwood, Marion's dad, is, but like I love the way that he knows enough for them to be like, "You're the perfect guy for us to come to." He's like, "No, not really. But I can find the guy." And I just absolutely love that. There's one of my favorite characters in this movie is Brody, his best friend, essentially, the one who just kind of gasses him up at every turn. And he becomes a little bit more important in the third movie. Him in The Last Crusade is one of just super fun. But there's a certain way that he looks at Indy and admires Indy and trusts Indy, and that it's really, really resonant in in such a short amount of time, like, he's like, 5 years ago I would have done this, but goddamn, I'm so happy for you to be able to do it. It's not envy. It's just like, he's proud of him, and I love that. It's such a cool relationship they have.
And that's why, like you said, the third movie is so fun too, with his, like, cause then he becomes a little bit more involved, I guess you would say, actively involved in some of these things that you don't see in the first movie. But I do like what you said. Like he's kind of a great, like, kind of comparison, because it's like you said, like 5 years ago I would have done this myself, and you can tell that there's a part of him, and you'll see it in the third movie about how he starts acting when he gets put right into those situations instead. He's brave, but he's like more sheepish brave, like, if that makes sense. Like in the third one you'll see. And so, like, that's why I love is like that appreciation. It's so obvious, because it's like
he aspires
not
to be
necessarily
Indy in a way,
but he knows that it's like I can't. Nobody can quite be as smooth as he can.
You gotta have something.
And that's not to say he doesn't have his moments, but it's like that's a really fun relationship to track and through these movies and stuff. And
that's what's so cool about this movie too, is we talk so much about Indy and the strength of that character, but the supporting cast is utterly incredible. When you have Marion Ravenwood and Sala and Brody, and then on the other side, the villain being Belloc, who one of my favorite movie villains ever, to be honest. I think that he's an incredible foil to Indiana Jones, and he does I love that they do the dark mirror thing in probably the most compelling way it's ever been done. This is how the MCU basically started. They were like, well, Iron Man gets his dark counterpart. Captain America gets Red Skull, his dark counterpart.
Damn.
Hulk gets his dark counterpart in Abomination. Thor has Loki. And, that's what they do. But when you ground that and you bring it down to earth and you see what that's like on a human level, it becomes all the more real and intense, and I love Belloc's, he's just like everybody else in the movie and wishes he was Indiana Jones. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the way he's compensating for not being Indiana Jones is by resorting to aligning himself with Nazis. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ultimate evil power. If I'm going to find a way to succeed, it's going to be with them.
And just let Indy do all the hard work.
Great contrast. I mean, he is colonial power personified, like what the Nazis are doing. They come in and they reap the resources of lands that have already established their hold in them. And he's like, they come in and they're like, cool, you're ours. Deal? Like, he is just them on an archaeological level, like he comes in after all the hard work's been done, he claims it for himself, and that's that. And I think that that's what's so cool about this movie, is that while there's obviously a fun action adventure flair that you don't have to think on a deeper level, there is such a strong anti-imperial and colonial mindset behind it. And, when you have George Lucas behind a story, that's almost inevitable. But there's such... I appreciate that the villains are Nazis, but at every turn, the people who pay the price most are those who align themselves with the Nazis. You know, like you've chose your side in a way, and now because you aligned with the evil, you get to reap the rewards of that. You know what I'm saying? And obviously the Nazis get the big payoff at the end, and that's really fulfilling.
And no one's debating if they're bad or not. I think that's kind of like they are the evil, and that is a more interesting side, is like who chooses to align themselves with the evil. And you know, whenever you can have this worthy adversary in a movie and have the two sit down and talk and, you know, just be head to head is always nice. And I never thought of it as kind of like a blueprint for superhero movies, but it makes perfect sense why. Because like this has the bare, I don't know, maybe it's just a good bare bone foundation for a good action adventure movie, and that's just what superhero movies boil down to. But like it has the like on Indy side alone, his passion, it's just his pure passion behind everything. He wants no glory. It's like, so the museum's gonna get it after we find it and it's all done. And he just accepts that, and it's like it's on and whatever. Like it's nothing to him. But then on the other side, that's the whole thing. It's, we want this. This is our power. You know, it's like we need this is ours. And I love that contrast, that he's just in it for the kind of the exploration, the kind of selfish reason to know, you know, I guess like to be in the know and to uncover it, I guess might be selfish, and to even mess with these
even see him overcome that instinct at the end, you know? Like Belloc's whole thing throughout the movie is, you want to see it as bad as I do. And at the end, he's like, close your eyes, Marion. Don't look at it. It's not for us to see. You know, like that's what Sala says. That's what their shaman says there. And I absolutely adore that.
Well, and I think like a lot of it too, like there's a certain nobility about it. I know you talked about like the achievement of it itself. And like, yes, there is some glory to be done with that. But like, I think, and maybe it wasn't nearly as stressed as like, I feel like there's in parts in the next two movies, or maybe even the third one more so, where like, there's such this like yearning desire for others to see it. Like he wants it to be on display. This is such an important piece of history. There's the respect is to the history of it, is to the, and that's like, I don't know. It's so different from what the reasons, like you said, Joseph, like why the Nazis want these things, because it's power, because it says, we discovered this and found this. You should align with us. Look at what we have, this piece of history that ties to, you know, how does that, you know, reflect power upon us and stuff, which it's just like I wrote in my notes too. The Nazi parts of these stories are always super like, I don't know, as a kid, like, you know, obviously growing up quite distanced from all of those times, like there was never anything that felt as like, just, I don't know, like this pride for like, yes, of course, like please beat the Nazis. Like, it's just like as a kid, it was so like, that was so neat and historic to me to like see that adversary, you know, in a time, you know, and stuff like that. And I love that parts of the story, you know. The third one, like Colton said, it gets better, but I mean, it's just like, that's such an easy foil, I guess. Like you said, like it goes deeper than just, oh yeah, Nazi bad. It's like why they want this stuff in versus why Indy. It's like, it's impossible to not root for this guy, even on just that level, let alone
there is obviously like, you're going to root against the Nazis, but them giving you reasons to root against the Nazis when they don't need to makes the movie better. You know, like it's, you know, you are going to root against the Nazis. There's not a single scenario in which you go, you know what, maybe they're right. You know, you already know that. But for them to further that agenda, further that side of the story by giving you more and more reason to hate them is good. You know, like I would argue that's one of the things that, to go back to the MCU, the first Avenger falters on. You know, that's a good example of, well, you're going to root against the Nazis because you don't like Nazis. You know what I'm saying? Like that's them's the rules. You're going to root against the Nazis, you know, like, and of course I am. I don't mind that. It doesn't hurt the movie. It could have been that much better if, say, Red Skull was full blown like, I'm not trying to make an offshoot of the Third Reich. I'm trying to take over the Third Reich. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to be the new leader. You know, like that's but anywho, that's the strength of this movie compared to a lot of other movies. And
Well,
you know, go ahead. Sorry.
and I was just gonna say, like, you kind of touched on it too with it's not just the Nazi villain where it's like, I can't think of his name in the glasses. I'm blanking.
Yeah.
I mean the blatantly like most Nazi guy
Yeah,
in the
the
whole movie.
Tot.
Fraulein.
T-O-H-T.
Fraulein.
Tot.
But then that's why they give you Belloc, is because it's like, I love that trope in movies when it's done correctly and well. The one that like jumps to my head that's doing it, and I'm not going to claim this is like done perfectly, but as far as the juxtaposition between the two, like a double villain kind of thing, where you have like the more in line with your hero villain, as well as like the villain who gets the hands dirty and goes the extra mile to be the outwardly like really hateable,
the muscle.
dirty guy. Like Iron Man 2 does that with Hammer. He's like almost a direct like carbon copy of Tony Stark, but Tony Stark who's willing to not be as noble and not be as he's willing to go behind and do some dirty work and stuff, or go seek out the dirty work. And then you have Ivan Vanko, who is like obviously now similar to Tony in some regards, but very much crooked and violent and doing the very, very bad things. Like, I like that trope, and it works so well in this movie, having your Indiana Jones counterpart kind of guy, like the one you said, like he wants to be Indy, but it's so apparent, like from the moment you meet him, that it's like, yeah, you having to be cowardly and resort to the other method, like go resorting to, whatever it might be. Just it clearly
and
like
that in it
separates
alone makes you not indie. You decide, that it's not.
I
you
just
can just
like
they
always make those guys. They make it a point, it feels, to make those people who like represent that in some of these movies to look very weak at any one point. Like you said, like they reap what they get for seeking out Nazi help or whatever it might be. That is just something that I love. Like I said, that two villain kind of aspect where you have your direct like indie counterpart where it's like, yeah, you'll never be him, but you want to, and then you have the guy who's like, I don't want to be him, I just want to be the fucking horrible person, and I fit that well. Also, you talked about the like other members of the cast. I don't know if there's ever a series of movies where like the sidekick presence is as like magnetic and just nailed almost every time as it is in this. The female counterparts are virtually almost always great. Marion's my favorite by far.
Yeah.
You've got Sala, you've got Brody, you've got Short Round in the next movie. I mean, like the just sidekick. Oh my goodness.
And that's one of that.
Unbelievable.
That might be the premier strength of the new one, Dial of Destiny. Like it has its problems to be sure, but I find no problem with Phoebe Waller-Bridge being his counterpart. And that's one of the. You could argue maybe Shia LaBeouf and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull might be. He does good in that movie, though. That's he does good in the movie. I don't like Shia LaBeouf at all, and I hate giving him credit, but he does good. He does good in that. So no, but you're right. I mean, the supporting cast is just always on 10 in these movies. There's I love the vulnerability Indy can display in regards to the people he loves. When it comes to Marion and the way when she gets captured and he's like running through the streets trying to find her and he's tearing down the baskets and he thinks she's dead. And there's that moment whenever he sits down with Belloc in the bar and it's clear he's done.
Yeah.
He's done playing fucking games. He's ready to kill this motherfucker if he has to. And he almost does. And I love that moment. And that's one of those moments too that's just, there's not a frame of this movie that isn't delightful to look at. It's so full and vibrant and full of life. And that moment when he's sitting across from Belloc in that tavern, pub, bar thing, in Cairo, and Indy's face is taking up like 90% of the screen like this.
Mhm.
And Belloc is right here talking to him. And it's so beautifully framed and so well done that you get to look at Indy and you get to watch Harrison Ford act his way through that scene where he just continues to seethe.
Yeah,
he just keeps getting more and more angry that Belloc
Mm.
thinks for any reason they are the same, and he's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna kill this guy. He gets up, pulls out his gun. Obviously everybody, I love the kids coming to his rescue, and him and Sala's relationship is really nice. I love them. But, yeah, no, like I said, the highlight for me will always be the romance between Indy and Marion, and that's why she's my favorite counterpart as far as the lead actress in the Indy movies. They don't nail it like this again. It's one of those things where Temple of Doom's a prequel, so you do get the benefit of knowing him and Marion aren't together at that time and stuff. Like, it's like, okay, so he gets, it's what happens before Marion essentially. But The Last Crusade, Karen Allen's also not in that one, and it's like, man, why not? And you kind of want that.
I guess I'm kind of dumb. Back in the 52-year journey day,
it does.
Did we even take favorites down at that point?
No.
Okay, wow. I was about to say, I thought that my favorites when we did was the supporting cast. I remember, I think I just had a liking towards Sala and Marion a little bit more, and I highlighted them.
I remember we talked about them a lot during.
Yeah,
that,
which is, I mean, I do love them. Don't get me wrong, but my point now is like, I don't know how I didn't highlight Indy like before. I don't know how I didn't just like Harrison Ford and Indy, but like, no, it is. They highlight him so perfectly while also having their own storylines and not
existing in their own
yeah,
right.
They're not just to push Indy forward. And Marion, like, having this superpower of basically just she can get as drunk as she possibly can, more than any human should be able to hold. But she can, it's like, I don't know. I love it that at first it's a way to introduce her character. Yeah, it's a way to introduce her, and she's kind of acting. It's her way of getting money, or whatever. But then later on, it's like, she's using it as kind of like a tool to act like she's drunk or whatever. And so I don't know. It is really cool that they can give the side characters.
Did any of you guys notice the scene when they're in the bar fight where what did you say?
Toht?
T-O-H-T. I don't know how to pronounce it one way or the other.
Yeah, whatever. When he comes into her bar, when Indy and them get there and they're trying to get the whatever, the thing that goes on top of the staff, the medallion, yes. There's a point where first of all, the practical and stunt work always. We've talked about this a little bit already, but the stunt work specifically from start to finish, fantastic. It's always some of the best. Probably, it's still like it's hard to. Like it holds up so well, all of it. Like it's so hard to fathom 40 years ago. But there's a point where like there's obviously a huge firefight, guns and stuff coming out, and there's a point where a gunshot goes through a barrel, and Marion is underneath it, and all of a sudden she notices it leaking out right next to her, and she just puts her mouth under it and like guzzles like 3 gulps of it. And just gets up and starts murking fools again. Like
she's
just little things like that.
Like
it's so awesome. Like it just makes her so likable. It's so cool. And like I will say this movie, it's so nice to watch this like and start thinking about it comparatively, because I haven't really done that as like like I will for this podcast. So like thinking about, we talked about the female counterparts in the next few movies. Like there's no one who you ever see who like keeps up with and truly compliments Indy in the way that she does. And also
they're the end
like,
game, like that's what makes her the perfect counterpart.
The back and forth that they have too is like it's never better than it is in this one. And so like that's just I just love her. She's the only one who can truly like keep up and keep him on his toes. And that's just,
I guess
it's just awesome.
Doesn't hurt too bad here.
Doesn't hurt here.
Or
here.
Here's not too bad either. It's
God
damn it, Indy.
When it comes to my favorite scenes, it's hard to not pick one with Marion and Indy, and specifically that one. I adore that scene for countless reasons. But there's one that I'll hold on to, but
the line comes from there, at least for me. It's not the years, honey. It's the mileage.
It's the mileage.
I don't know. There's a lot of lines to choose from, but this, I don't know why. It's just that moment. Maybe it was the scene. It's a way I can at least give that scene a nod. But yeah, he at least it made the quotes notes. I don't know. I'm starting to use that again. Starting to be a little more active on the Copperfield notes, note taking.
The quotes note. The notes. The
quotes notes.
I said.
Yeah.
I said
note quotes.
I almost said quotes notes.
Yeah.
Quotes Nostradamus.
Cosa Nostra.
Cosa Nostra. La Cosa Nostra. No. But yeah, like, and that's, like I said at the top of the episode, The Last Crusade kind of recaptures the magic that this movie has. Temple of the Doom does benefit from being a prequel. Indy is much more stereotypical action hero in that movie. And that's not just, like, I still enjoy Temple of Doom. It, for me, has the most glaring issues of any of the Indiana Jones movies directed by Spielberg, for not filmmaking wise, it's extremely well done. There's just some stuff that tastefully probably shouldn't have happened. It's also like the most divorced dude movie of all time. And I'm excited to talk about that in context. George Lucas was going through a divorce and Spielberg was going through a divorce at the time of that movie getting written. So
okay.
It comes through. And it's and watching it with that lens is interesting. But that's to say that when it comes to Marion and Indy's relationship in this movie, they lean into that a little bit with Temple of Doom being a prequel, sort of being like, the relationship that's formed in that movie was never going to last. Kate Capshaw, I think, is just horribly underrated for her role as Willie Scott in the second one, but their relationship is obviously built on something that's not nearly as strong as what Indy and Marion's is built upon. And I think that that's what makes their instant connection. Like, I know I said picking a favorite scene is like picking a favorite child here, but I have such a tough time not going with the Ravenwood saloon sequence. I mean, that is incredible in every regard. First, you get the conversation between Indy and Marion, which is just them getting a chance to act their asses off across from each other. That familiarity, that chemistry, it's utterly brilliant. I love the way Spielberg loves a shadow on the wall. Another thing you might have noticed with the Fabelmans connection there. I love Indy's towering shadow when Marion turns around stuff, and then to contrast it later with Tot's shadow on the wall, and them. So then you get that evolution, and then Indy coming back, and the whole fight breaking out, and it's the first scene that makes me even think about the production design going on. It's utterly fucking amazing what set building they did. Because then you go, hold the fucking phone. The beginning of the movie is mostly a set too, with the boulder falling through, and you're like, they didn't just find a fucking temple and go ahead and shoot it. No, like they built that fucking stuff, and
it's incredible.
It's incredible all the way through the movie, all the way to Cairo. I love the way they photograph Cairo, and but like the interiors there, the pit that they fall into, both of them. Like the first one where the map room is, and the second one where they're the Well of Souls, where they're kept. When it comes to the sets, man, it's unbelievably good, and so that. The saloon sequence when they get out and she's like, if I'm gonna get my money back, I'm coming with you. I'm your partner. Them like yelling and stuff in the snow and the wind. Like, God, I love that. And there's also a nostalgia. There's a nostalgia there for me with the Lego Indiana Jones game. I don't know if you guys ever played that.
Yes.
But I remember vividly there was a button you could press where Indy could like toss his whip at Marion and like reel her in, and they'd kiss. And it was so cool. It was so cool. So like, and that was the part it happened at in the video game, was when they were on top of that mountainside, and I just love it. I love it.
Well, and like I do like that part where they come out and they've just went through this most incredible like firefight, and this trope happens other times where like Indy's clearly like exhausted, stressed out to the max, and then immediately gets pressed by like sidekick / love interest, and you hear that like you can hear the overwhelmed nature in his voice, but like the chemistry between them, like that's just Marion for you. Like she's immediately on it, like I don't care, no time to rest. Like I have things to say to you. I have beef with you, and that's just like so. It's just so perfect. The chemistry is just it's nailed with that duo there.
I love
it's truly
the fact
really
that
special.
She's blacked out drunk the whole time. Like, or I don't know, blackout, but like she is hammered, through this whole thing. And like the very beginning, she's like, Indiana Jones, in my bar or whatever, just the first like sentence she says, like it's kind of clear that, I don't know, she's honing in a little bit. She's like, oh yeah, no, wait a minute. I'm a little bit drunk, but I got to talk to him as if I'm, not. And I don't know, that it is very worthy of the scene to pick. I mean, it has everything. It has the action. It does have the romance at the beginning. It has the filmmaking prowess of all the shadows on the walls, the fire, all the like the production value that is required for all this stuff to go on. And I don't know. It's easy to follow too. It's never in the action are you lost at all.
Mm-mm.
And there's even an action sequence that like reminded me a bit of Mad Max. Like he's like literally. I feel like he's in a big rig. I think the Ark is in the back of that rig, pretty sure. And one Nazi's driving it. They fight. He goes out of the front, and he has to like kind of go underneath.
Sliding underneath the car?
Yeah.
God damn, is that so fucking
like,
cool.
What?
That is so fucking cool. Because he knows he's going to ram him into the other car, so he has to drop underneath and the sliding down and hooking his whip. Like,
I'm
there's
talking
such
literally doing that though, like the stunt.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clear that they were speeding it up. I think a little bit, like the footage, maybe, or I don't know. I'm curious of what they did to do that, because I mean, he was the stunt guy. I don't know.
No, that's a stunt man.
Like
that's a stunt man doing a job.
That was incredible. But then Indy just getting back on and then giving the powerhouse kick of the century, and then just wailing on him and then giving him the same punishment. I love that it's like, here, you do exactly, or you're in the same exact situation I was in, and let's just see how you fare.
Good luck.
And just ran over,
Good.
So I don't know. I love that was, I don't know, not a scene contender, but just like a crazy, like,
dude,
holy
the action's
shit.
incredible.
Like,
Well,
no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I love the way that they I don't want to say they subvert expectations all the time, but one thing I love about the action sequences is like you can always see them wearing on Indy as the character in these moments.
Yes.
Like, it's not like other movies where like I can do this all day type stuff, and I'm not like singling out Cap as like that's unreal. He's a superhero.
He's caught a lot of shit this time,
But I mean, like a real person, like in these situations, would not have much energy or anything left.
The giant fucking guy approaches him, and he's like, "Okay," like the way he like squares up, and he's like,
"But
fuck."
What I love is like there are moments like that where he steps up to the plate, and then there are other moments where you can just tell his brain is running a mile a minute. He's exhausted. Guy pulls out the sword, whipping his sword around, and he's like, "This guy's clearly got the shit with the sword fighting." Indy, you'd expect him to pull out the whip. He's gonna try to disarm him. Nope. How about the 9? Just straight to the chest. It's
incredible
over.
behind the scenes story there.
The subversion of expectations at times is just great. They do the fighting. Every fight scene's fresh. Like, they'll subvert your expectations sometimes. Then you get the big guy, and they'll really go to work on the fight scene.
Yeah.
And it's just the stunt work, the fight scenes, everything. It's so like retro cool. Everything about this franchise is so retro cool because it's shot 80s style, 80s technology.
Oh yeah,
80s technology. But you're talking about 1930s, 40s, like that era of
and temple.
timeline.
Yeah, like.
it's so cool. Like as a kid, it was even then so retro cool and something that made me so nostalgic. And it was like this was almost as a kid, like my like my grandpa, he was this well-read man. He loved history and he loved these movies. So for me, as like a 9-year-old kid getting into
felt
this, it was like,
intelligent.
oh, I'm so much cooler than all my friends who like watch cartoons. I watch Indiana Jones. Like it made me feel so smart and all of this stuff. Like there's so much
way
to
cooler
love
than
and
me. Yeah, I was like,
just,
I feel so left out,
incredible.
you know? It's like I do feel so left out. This is the cooler thing to watch as a kid, I feel like. But,
no, I can't wait to,
I'm not
I can't wait
trying
to
like
show the
sun
nieces
you,
and
Joe.
nephews. I can't wait to show the nieces and nephews Raiders and my brothers as their parents getting mad at me for like, they show people's heads exploding and melting at the end of the movie. And I'm like, they gotta see it, man. That's just part of life. Like,
it was
people's
Nazi.
heads melt and explode. It's
it?
Nazis. It's okay. No, but, the behind the scenes story for the not sword fight is incredible because Harrison Ford was exhausted after a day of heavy fight scenes and stuff. And that was supposed to be another fight scene. And he just whipped out his gun and shot the guy. And the swordsman was really pissed because he trained hard to do that fight scene. Like with the sword. The guy's not a natural born swordsman. Like he trained with the sword to figure out how to do that. And luckily it became one of the most iconic moments in the entire franchise. So, no harm done.
Do you think the dude's
that's quite the like balance of
the dude's
like
fine
which
with it.
way
The
is
dude's
the right
fine with
way?
it. Yeah.
I
got to imagine now he's fine.
Probably mad at the
He's
time.
gotten a lot more run. He's gotten a lot more run in the long run because of that. I would say.
But no, I mean, but the fight sequence that always really stands out to me as being the most deeply influential of the entire movie is the one where Indy faces off with the Muscle Man. 'Cause I love every step along the way. And I know we're talking a lot about Marvel movies and stuff. There is not a single action sequence that influenced Marvel or MCU action sensibility more than that. So it starts, it's just Indy versus some guy. Indy can handle that, Indy can handle him versus some guy. Marion climbs up in the plane. She knocks out the guy. We're good for a second, but she gets locked in. Okay, not good. Muscle Man catches wind, goes ahead, removes the shirt, is like, okay, let's fucking do this thing. Steps in, starts taking on Indy. However, in the midst of all this, more Nazis arrive. Marion has to kill all of them. In the process, it opens up a fuel tank. Bad news, a fire just started. So now the fire is creeping towards the gasoline's creeping towards the fire, which happens to be seeping under the plane as well. Now we've got a ticking clock. Indy's got to figure out how to beat the Muscle Man, get on top of the plane, get Marion out of it, and run away in time. The action sequence this specifically reminds me of is the train sequence in Shang-Chi. If you'll recall, the runaway train sequence where we're against a ticking clock. This is going to get to the bottom. Awkwafina goes to the front of the train. She has to try to figure out how to drive it. Razor Fist is trying to stop him. He cuts the brake line. There are civilians he's trying to escort. It's just, there is such a deep influence this has on that chaotic action sequence that I feel bleeds through to so many modern action movies, but I feel like the MCU specifically has ripped it quite a bit. And God, I love that sequence. I adore that sequence. And I love the way, there feels like it's the end of the movie after, it's like, oh, cool. Yeah, we made it out. And then it's like, no. No.
Not quite.
I love the actual culmination of the movie is so fulfilling. Them being tied up and the opening of the Ark and the Nazis getting obliterated and the hole in the sky opening and the power of God returning and it's just it's so cool.
That's one of the most, I don't want to say lost when you think of these movies in hindsight. Rewatch, it's so impossible to miss, but it's something that I don't want to say I don't forget it, but it always catches me off guard because I'm so excited for some of the bigger things. These movies always find a way to delve into the paranormal / bigger than, and that's what makes like, there's very few movies who have like, you have your hero, your villain. Usually there isn't much that happens. It doesn't feel like, where like there's this third kind of like gray area that's like central to the plot. Such a great like storytelling piece that it's like, yes, obviously like good and bad fight over those things all the time. But what Indy does is it's like, one of them isn't using the power, right? Like it's, I don't know how to explain it. Like the third party almost, it doesn't win, but like it doesn't,
It neutralizes.
I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
that doesn't always happen, I guess, if that makes sense, where it's like free to do whatever what it does. It's doing what it does, you know. I mean, I don't know how else to
do what it does. Yeah.
But
no,
like,
but
I don't know, like
that permeates throughout every Temple of Doom is always the odd one out, you know, like
yeah,
that is certainly the most unique of these movies. For better or worse, there are people who will say Temple of Doom's their favorite, and I can't blame them one bit. I want to make it clear that I don't. I love all 5 of these movies. It's just that for me, Temple of Doom is least among them. But yeah, when it comes to Crystal Skull and it comes to Last Crusade and even Dial of Destiny, there is a degree of a neutralizing force when it comes to the mentioned, you know, the MacGuffin, you know, the Lost Ark or the
I don't supernatural, like otherworldly
the Holy Grail in the Last Crusade, the Crystal Skull in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I think it was whenever he's talking with Brody, whenever they were like, yeah, they want you to go actually look for the Ark, and Indy was like, oh my god, this is everything we ever got into this in the first place for, blah blah blah, and then I feel like I had a train of thought there, but it was more of like how Indy, like there is this good versus evil, but then there's also this side of Indy where it's like, I don't believe in all that mumbo jumbo power, you know, God's power, whatever. I'm just in this for the history part of it. But then as the story unfolds, he's like, oh, well, some of this is a little too undeniable. You know, it's like clearly I'm witnessing, you know, something.
I've seen shit. Yeah, like no, that's when he's talking to the army guys. You know, he says like, what is it? He's like lightning, rays, power of God, something like that. You know, like he just kind of throws it out there like an afterthought. Power of God. That's what they thought.
But then when he's
that is a great through line in these movies, is kind of watching him become less skeptical and become more a believer, and that is one of the really cool things again about The Last Crusade. But
one thing, yes, God, we got to stop doing this, but that is one thing that I think The Last Crusade does, is like there's something that drives him further away from that skeptical nature. Like there's like stakes at play there that almost make him to where it's like, I have no other choice. But you can see that believe. Like it's warranted. Yeah, it's not necessarily that like, oh, I'm only doing this because of this. It's like everything that he's done and been through to that point, and then also it's
also
like,
this
has to, it has to. God, man,
dude.
These movies, I get
so
too
good.
geeked
They're
about
so
these.
good.
Like nothing. It's just, I don't know. Like even still to this point, like in all of my like movie watching, and like I have characters who I just love and adore, who I like. I always want to be like. Indy is the most unique, like the only character who I can think, and you mentioned this too, and I'm not much of a 007 Bond guy either, but like there's this beautiful blend of like cunning, smart, intelligent, like he can be rugged, he can be clean look, like play whatever part, like Indy is so like, it's like, how could you not watch it and immediately just be like, I want to be just like, I want to be him. I don't know if there's any character who can like the duality of just like, I can be rugged, brawlish, like brutish, but then I can be so tender with like my love interests and like the charisma and just all of that, like the intelligence, like he can chop it, flip it, drop it,
Harrison
whip it,
Ford.
whatever way you want him to. It's just unbelievable. Like
Yeah, no, he's incredible, man. He is. I wanted to shine a light on one of my favorite line deliveries in the whole movie because I never see it talked about, but it always guts me. And I want to give some credit to the actor because he's really good in this movie. The gentleman who plays Belloc, his name is Paul Freeman. And he gets outshined, obviously, being the villain. Yeah, but Karen Allen and Harrison Ford are both just so good in this movie that it's hard to rise to that occasion. And I think he does everything he possibly can to. But that scene with Marion where they're drinking. And Marion goes, "What is this stuff?" There's a way Paul Freeman delivers the line in response that just fucking kills me every time. Always makes me laugh. It's when he goes, "I grew up with this stuff. It's my family label." And I don't know what it is about that line delivery that just always fucking kills me. But there's it reminds me of just how good some drunk acting can be. Like most of the time, I won't put it past some of the time. Most of the time, the people in scenes are not drunk when they're drinking. This guy's too important in the movie to be drunk when he's drinking. And that was just an incredible drunk acting moment. Another one, like the other guy Marion acts across in the first drinking contest. Brilliant drunk performance.
That's just a drunk
to the point
Physical
where I'm
comedy.
like, that guy might be drunk. When he he feels around the table and finds the cup and then falls backwards. Like there's so much about the action and stunt work and physical comedy that is just so reminiscent of silent film. Like in silent film comedy and the way that they, the over the top, the Wilhelm scream and stuff like that. Like that's the essence of that. It just feels so perfect for that, and it's so wonderful.
It's really funny you say that because it almost feels like this is a movie that, like, gosh, I mean, if you were to make it silent, and I don't want that, obviously, but like the sound effects and stuff that they do, it's almost like you could picture, if you close your eyes and just listen, you could picture what's happening with how vivid the sounds and singular the sounds are to what. Yeah. And then also the fighting and the physical, just all of the stunt work. It's almost like I don't even need the sound because I can imagine what that sounds like watching how good this physical acting, stunt work, everything is. It's unreal that they can do. Like I said, 1981 is just unbelievable to fathom that between the technological, the VFX, the physical effects, the set work, the practice, everything. Speaking of which, I feel like I say this every time we watch a movie that I've seen episodes of this on, but Corridor Crew has talked about many of the Indiana Jones movies, the physical effects, stunt work, everything. Highly, 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 highly recommend that. Corridor Crew's super cool. They review special effects and stuff. So, but the Indy episodes are great. There's just so much to pay respect to the processes of some of these movies and how they achieved what they did. Unbelievable.
Dude, it's incredible work. It's incredible work across the board. And just kind of, we've said this for a lot of movies in the past, but this is what movies are for. This is why you make movies, to do stuff like this. That's, and there are a few movies that match up to this level on that level. You know what I'm saying? Like when you think about why we create stories, why we tell stories, why we use the visual medium. And it's a story that could have so easily been fumbled. It could have been a lot worse if it didn't have Spielberg at the helm, if it didn't have Ford in the lead, if John Williams didn't score it, if the production design wasn't as good, if the art direction wasn't as good. Like there's just so many things that just keep that in tandem and in complement of each other create one of the best movies ever. And I will forever love it.
This story also feels like really, I don't want to say it's hard to nail when you see how just absolutely incredible they did it. But I mean, think about trying to pitch this without being able to say, hey, Harrison Ford's the main actor and wait till you see this character. Separate from anything now, imagine saying hey, we're going to follow a kind of explorer, adventurer, archaeologist kind of guy. He's a Professor Daylight, but he's actually this super bad.
I don't know.
It's hard to visualize that actually.
No, well, that's the thing. Is the thing is if some guy goes to the studio and goes, I have an idea. I want it to be reminiscent of the 40s action adventure pulp heroes. I want it to be an archaeologist who is fighting against Nazis, and I want to make a movie about that. He might get a little money. He might. It's a fun idea, but it's like, how do you execute that? Now, the guys walking into there are George Lucas, who has just made Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. Steven Spielberg, who 5 years earlier made the highest grossing movie of all time until it was broken by George Lucas, the guy who was with him. And they know it's going to be played by the guy who was Han Solo in the movies George Lucas just broke records with. So like, it's more that the studio bet on them than they did the story itself, you know? And like, and that's what makes it such a pleasure, is that everyone involved wanted to make this happen. And because they got essentially free fucking reign, we get a movie as special as this.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was whenever you were saying that everything is just so great and that you didn't want it to be a silent film, but it could almost function as so. I think it's just a compliment to how well the visual storytelling is on display. But then also you can make this the opposite, I guess, an audio only movie, and it's still almost works.
It plays like a radio serial almost. Yeah, you know, then, like you could.
I mean, you take this movie on any level. You just read the screenplay. Fuck, it could be one of the best books you've ever read in your life. Like, I don't know. It's like I feel like they just cooked on every department. And it's because it was just like a simple idea on the bare bones, but the people involved are such just great talent already, and they're given a shit ton of money to do whatever the fuck they want. And Spielberg, he wanted to make his Western, you know, it's like it feels like it's the movie he's always wanted to make, but this feels like so much more than a Western. This is not a coming of age, but like a I don't know, like just a adventure.
I don't like adventure movie.
Yeah, it's just what I don't know.
Movie.
And maybe I just love adventure so much, and it's like it's what I love, this idea of archaeology and that. So I don't know, maybe I'm in it.
No, I think it's universal, man. Like everybody has this spirit within them, and if you don't, it unlocks it. You know, like that's kind of the strength of this movie.
It's like I mean I mentioned this with like how this movie even got to me. Like I was 9 years old. A lot of the story does not necessarily like. I don't want to say that a 9-year-old can't comprehend it, but there's definitely a level where like it could be too much above for like an 8, 9-year-old. Like it could be like in some sense, you know, it's a little like, I don't know,
Nazis,
more mature in a certain sense, I guess. Like, I mean, my grandpa, like at the time, like when I was that age and he showed me these movies, like when he's sitting me down saying he's going to watch a movie with me, it's hard to fathom a guy like that. For one, I really didn't think he probably watched much TV, movies, anything really. He has like millions of books about history. So like for me, I'm thinking we're getting into some like history type
boring
epic.
Ass shit you don't have.
And we get what we get. And it's like, wow, like this bridges the gap between me and you. You are 50, 60 years my senior. And here we are. You love this for your reasons, and I love this, and I had like I could get with the story too, and like I said, archaeology and like history at 8, 9 years old doesn't necessarily sound on paper like it's really swinging you terribly. Like some kids have that interest, but not everyone. But I'd be hard pressed to find a kid with the things that you see and get in this movie who doesn't like it. I mean, the
that's
score,
the thing too, is
action,
it almost feels innate to the childish mind to go, I want to dig for something in my backyard. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to go find something that I can't find unless I really fucking search for it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something that feels pretty universal, you know? And there's something that this does tickle that fancy, you know? And I think that there's a wonderment that it's handled with on the filmmaking side, specifically from Spielberg, that just, he obviously loves what he's creating. And I think that that's a huge plus. And Harrison Ford obviously loves the role he's playing. And that's just, when you get such a powerful duo like that, you can't fail. You know, I know Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was not well received. That movie fucking rocks. and I won't hear otherwise. Like
It's good.
Everyone can have the perspective. That movie absolutely fucking rules.
I'm so excited to watch that one. That's probably the one I've seen the least, and probably
that's the
haven't
one
watched
I
the
have
longest.
seen.
So
that is the one I have seen the second most, guaranteed. Behind Raiders, that is the one I've seen the second most. And it would probably be third if I'm ranking them. I think I would go Raiders, Crusade, Crystal Skull, Temple of Doom, Dial of Destiny. I don't know which one. I'll have to rewatch Dial of Destiny. It'll only be my second viewing, so we'll see.
I have to say, I feel like the way people, and I don't want to compare this as far as like the substance necessarily, but like, how Spider-Man 3 is arguably not a very solid, like assembled movie story-wise. There's some things in there, but like a lot of people will tell you that like that's the one they've seen the most. And I don't want to say that because like I think that's a little more like, oh, like I don't have the like energy or capacity to like get into something I really want to like watch. Like I just want to be able to kind of like, I don't want to say turn it off, but turn the brain down some and watch that and like, just kind of enjoy at face value, whatever it is that inherently like fun, I guess you would say. It's not so much that, but like I do think it's definitely like in that same vein where I just think it's like enjoyable in a sense of like, for me, like I've seen that one a little bit more because after it came out, it hit TV and it would be on TV a lot.
Right.
Back then. So like I can recall like, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, it's Last Crusade, it's halfway through, let's sit down and watch. I'd be like, I'd just wait 2 more hours and turn it on my DVD and watch from start to finish.
Right.
Whereas like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, if that was like halfway through, I'd be like, this would be fun. Like I want to see the trail or whatever.
That's valid.
Like
That's valid.
I think, and I don't know, maybe I'm like, and keep in mind it's been a little while for me, so maybe I'm misremembering how enjoyable and like some of the redeeming qualities of that movie to kind of dumb it down to that level. I don't mean to.
No, I don't think you're misrepresenting it. I don't think that I am being completely unbiased when I say things. You know what I'm saying? Like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull works for me on a level that I don't anticipate it works for a ton of people on. You know what I'm saying? Like I do think you will find the revisit highly enjoyable. Like more so than you recall. I think that people have. Joe, what do you know about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
I don't know.
Anything?
Nope.
The idea? Anything?
Nope.
Nothing about what the Crystal
this
Skull
is good. You're gonna be like,
I'm not gonna keep going.
This is great.
This is important.
No,
I won't go any further with that then. But yeah, no, it's just it's a bigger swing and it's good. It's strong. I like it, but and it's hard when it's Spielberg. Like Spielberg, he makes good fucking movies. Like if he's directing a movie, it's at least well made, and it's hard to deny that. You know what I'm saying? Like there are people who, no director is immune to a shit show at some point. Like that happens. But I don't think Crystal Skull's one of them. That's just me. And I mean, Raiders though, it's the top of the mountain for me, and there is a degree of nostalgia there that's kept it there. Like it's like the gap between Raiders and the Last Crusade is not big, and the gap between the Last Crusade and the rest of the three is pretty large. And I love all 5 of them. So that's just to say how much I love Raiders and the Last Crusade. So I'm excited to dig into this a little bit more and dig into this franchise because this was a great episode. I'm so very happy with it. Do we have much else to say on Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I think I don't know. I just didn't declare a favorite shot. The only one, I don't know. I liked whenever we got in. There's a lot to choose from, so I guess
yeah.
But whenever Marion walks out and sees Cairo kind of for the first time, and you have Indy like staying back to like kind of look at her and to see her as beautiful as she is, and then like I don't know the camera and
that
just,
costume. God damn.
Yeah.
The red pants and the white blouse with the red accent. I love it. I love it. That's an incredible look.
But yeah, that was my.
I mean, and then Indy's costume design, obviously, throughout the whole movie is
kit,
incredible.
everything, whip, bag, telescope.
Well, and that's the strength of the first 10 minutes before they reveal Indy's face, is that they give you a sense of the essence of the man before they give you the man. You know, they show the silhouette with the fedora. They show the whip. You know, they show him whip that thing out. They show him look at the map, and you know, like they show the exploration side of him before they show him, and it creates a mythic figure within seconds, and I love that. But yeah, one of my favorites.
I still love the contrast, like, of the, like, his, like, his daylight, you know, like, he daylights as a professor. Like, and that's not to say that I don't think he brings it for that, but you can just tell, like, that's not what he's really, like, getting his fulfillment. But I just love that, like, this contrast of, like, the same character. Like, it's impossible to not come away from it without being just like, God, like, I want to be that. I just, like, I keep saying it, but, like, he just does. Like, he pulls out a notebook at one point, and he's taking, and it's like, I need a notebook. Like, why don't I have a leather back, like, notebook that I can take notes down in, and important things? Like, why do I not have a little satchel bag that, like, I can keep a bag of sand in case I need to steal a golden idol and replace the exact weight? Like,
I might have not put this in my backpack yesterday after I watched Indiana Jones. I literally found a leather kind of bound journal, and I'm like, I'll keep that on me for, I don't know why, but it's in my backpack now. So, and that's because of Indiana Jones. So
still, like, I'm so enamored and just, like, captivated by the retro cool of this. Like, it's unique. Like, I'm a very nostalgic person in essence, and I tend to really, like, delve into said eras, periods, things like that when something captivates me. Like, Guardians really captured, like, kind of 60s, 80s, kind of a hybrid of, like, funk / like Sam Cooke type stuff. Like, that era became very suddenly, like, vintage cool. Like, that became something I was nostalgic for. But, like, this is so much more distant and unique in the sense of, like, I don't know, like, yeah, it's cool to everybody in a sense, but, like, I don't know, like, that. It's just such a different nostalgia for me.
There's a realness to it, you know? Like, obviously, we take this to some fantastical places with the Ark and everything, but, like, it's hard to fathom that this is a real period in history for us, you know? Like, the fact that World War II happened, and this predates World War II, it's 1936, but, like, the fact that is a real conflict that happened because the Nazis decided they were going to kill over 10 million people. Like, that's jarring. That's something we have a tough time wrapping our heads around, as something that's even possible. So, like, revisiting this era in a capacity where one man takes on the Nazis, like, that's fucking awesome. I love that.
And the other thing too is, like, think of the methods of, like, this exploration, and even on both sides, like, think about how that would be done today. Now, there is no, like, Indiana Jones, like, one guy solo mission exploring at this, like, level. Like, maybe the Nazis is closest to what it would look like today, and that makes sense because obviously they're not cool and not as, like, not fun to root for. Like, obviously the mass scale of their, like, operation for mining and trying to find this stuff. But, like, I just mean, like, think about how this would be done today. It would be like a multi-million-dollar operation where it's just, like, throwing money at it, throwing as many human and physical resources at it as possible to uncover something. It's so, like, I don't know, uncool, like, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, to imagine this being the method, like, this one guy, he's using the resources of the people and of the land. Like, he is using these people, and not, like, I don't want to say using them as in it's like he knows he needs them, and, like, he trusts and relies
values
on
them.
And,
it's not it's not the way Belloc uses them. Belloc uses them so he can toss them aside and cast them out.
And then, like I said, just the retro cool of this, like, every little detail is so, like, I don't know, like, something that just, I can't fathom why, but, like, I just
makes
adore
it
it. Like,
timeless.
the Pan American, like, airways, like, just that plane, like, it takes off from the water, and the way it looks on the cabin, like, First of all, it seems like a big death machine, but like people were just doing that. And like it
Mm-hmm.
looks so cool, but also scary, but cool. The flight montage, like the movie making is so retro cool. Like the flight montage where it's like you see the plane like kind of faded in the background flying with the map in the forefront with like a red line. Like and just the jagged angles that it takes and stuff. Like it's so, the score, like all of it is just so.
All of it works.
Like,
all of it works, man.
And I think in hindsight, like what this really tells me is just how much of a fondness I have for like 80s style movie making. But what I love is like not all of these movies, even if they're 80s style movie making, a lot of the movies I love, like Back to the Future, that's 80s era movie making, but it takes place in the 60s at one point. Even 3 like takes place in the early 1900s, late 1800s, whatever, Wild West. Like there's so much retro cool from then, and maybe it wasn't as retro cool. That's just the movie style making, whatever. All of them, like Star Wars, all of that, like that era. It's just something that even as a kid I can recall, just like enjoying and loving, because it's like this is unlike anything I watch today. It's just so singular, and I think I was always even appreciative of like the fact that like I could see the difference technology wise from like movies when I was that age versus when those came out, but how they still made them so like just incredibly technologically driven. It's like I could always appreciate, even as a kid, they were doing more with less, and that was always more cool to me than anything.
There. Yeah, the passion.
It's always been something that just like I can't get over how good the practical, all of the effects work, stunts, sound, everything is wonderful.
All cylinders, all cylinders. And Ty, what you're saying, and with Joe's talk of passion, I think that bleeds through even into the character Indy. Like you were talking just a second ago about how like he daylights as a professor. But like, what else would he do? Like, it's not like he can just put archaeology aside until it's time to go for a dig. Like, no, he lives, breathes, and eats this stuff. This is what he does. So if he's not going to be on a dig, he's going to be doing archaeology, and the only other way it's possible to do archaeology, which is teaching it. You're either doing the projects, being there, searching, or you are teaching it. Like those are the only ways archaeology is done, at least at the time. And
legally, you can. Yeah, I can choose to go to the pyramids right now and do some digs, but it probably won't go over well for me. And yeah, I wanted to like watching these movies. It's like, am I realizing that I just want to become Indy eventually? Because like I've had a plan B of becoming like a college professor, but I never knew what I would teach or like do. And maybe this is the actual plan now. Like this would be
It's funny, you talk to a lot of I've seen a lot of people who are archaeologists now, who became archaeologists because of Indiana Jones, and are like, yeah, it's not Indiana Jones. It's cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's obviously you're not going to be raiding temples and going through booby traps, I guess, and all that stuff. There's probably a lot more boring stuff behind the scenes, but
a lot more paperwork, a lot more, like there's a point whenever he talks to Brody at the beginning where he's like, I had it right here. Do you want to hear about it? He goes, no, that's fine. I'm sure everything you do falls in accordance with the laws that we are supposed to maintain and what we're supposed to stick to and everything. So yes, I'm sure you did all those things correctly. But no, I don't need to hear about it. And I love that stuff, and so it's just cool to have a character that's passion bleeds through from the obvious passion the actor, the filmmakers, everybody has for creating the thing. And I think that bleeds through. And the genre bending Spielberg gets to do with Indiana Jones, and I mean, like The Last Crusade is more Western than this movie is by like a long shot. And obviously the action adventure is always maintained. There's a musical sequence in Temple of Doom. There's there's all sorts of stuff that they do. The fourth one's a little more science fiction at points. Like and so is the fifth one, but there's a lot to like, and there's always horror flares. There's always action adventure. There's like, it's just cool whenever you get a little bit outside the box and you do a little bit more. And I think that this movie just does incredible with it.
Movie. This is
movie.
the
movie.
It's a movie, you know. Man, as a movie can get. This is pinnacle. Yeah, just maybe peak movie, peak cinema.
This the film.
Film.
One thing I do want to say is that like the most insignificant but like little thing that just immediately to me like always gets me in the mood for these movies, I guess, or I shouldn't say gets me in the mood, but like sets me as far as like how I'm planning to view, like it gets me seated basically. Like this is like the moment when you turn this movie on and that 1981 Paramount Pictures logo
Fades
comes up
into the mountain. Oh God.
And you just know because like I have some books that like Disney CEO at one point was at Paramount during this stretch, and Raiders is hugely important to his story in his career, which is interesting in and of itself. But his time at Paramount and just I'm familiar. Paramount is like they were on a meteoric rise at that point. Like they were just taking off. And so like seeing that logo and knowing that like people back then would have been seated and seen that and been like, oh, here we go. Like this is the latest Paramount flick. Like that's like the kind of like era time frame like it was like that just always like evokes this feeling of like, all right, make sure like sit down, get ready. Like the nostalgia's kicked in already.
Yeah,
like prepare to be transported and just like
The Godfather was kind of
awesome.
what launched Paramount into a different stratosphere.
Damn, that's a
production side. And that was only about 10 years earlier. And then, you know, we're actually in the midst of Paramount swirling the drain, which is, you know, one way or the other about giant corporations failing. But when it's because of monopolies,
man, look at where they were. Look at where they once were. And what they could have or what they did. Because that transition shot
commercial though
was sick though.
Great commercial
for Indy.
Great commercials. No, for
for
Paramount Plus.
I just threw him high.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart launching,
Patrick Stewart
what is it, Hey Arnold?
A child.
Hey Arnold up the wall from Game of Thrones. It's like, what's going on?
But,
No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But yeah, so I'm going to do the plugs, which are very short since we're on the Cinementalists here. All you have to do is follow on Twitter at Cinementalists. You can also catch us over on our regular show, Penny Bloom Podcast, where we are currently doing the Penny Bloom Dispatch. We also have a Star Wars series now. It's called Fulcrum, a Star Wars podcast. You can catch any of those anywhere, anytime. It's all over the place. We're everywhere, man. You know, just stick with us. And the main place to be, if you want to keep up with everything we're doing, is Penny Bloom Pod on Twitter. Go ahead and follow there. You won't be disappointed. Tons of updates, tons of stuff. Lot of fun. Go ahead and check us out there. We'll be back next week with Temple of Doom. I'm very excited to get to the next Indiana Jones movie. We'll be doing that for the next 5 weeks, and we'll be capping off the year with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So that's how we're gonna. That's the rest of 2024 for us. Indy, Lord of the Rings, and that's doesn't get much better than that. So I'm very happy. But yeah, so new rating system for Cinementalists, Kyler. It's one number.
Yeah.
One
That's
number.
true.
1 to 10.
Oh, this is
How are you
true.
feeling? All things considered, 1 to 10. We know it's incredibly difficult to put a numeric value on the quality and your enjoyment and all things considered in a film. On a scale of 1 to 10, we're doing 0.25 intervals if you desire. What do you call this movie?
It's 9.5. I'm not even like ashamed or anything. Like I think that's
9.5.
Yeah, I could go. I could
there.
realistically.
No, I'm a 10.
Take it a step,
Okay.
but
Yeah, I was gonna say.
To me, like I don't know. This is one of the first movies I've had the luxury of being on with you guys, where like I feel like even if it's me not being slightly biased, irrational, and like my enjoyment, like the quality and just what this movie represents for like the movie industry as a whole is like worthy of that high. If we're going 10s, I'm going. I'm sorry. I just feel like I can't break guys with a 10.
Yeah,
I'm not. I swear I try to like feel like I have integrity, but then sometimes I think I just undersell. Like I know this shit.
Integrity.
Who cares?
It's a 10.
Not whenever.
It's a 10.
Not when we're talking
This
about
movie
movies. Movies
Yeah.
are subjective. You get to feel however you feel about a movie, and this is,
It-
it's a 10. It's a 10 for me. You know, like
It-
it's one of my favorites of all time. To this day, me and Joe are constantly updating our like top 100, top whatever many movies of all time. And no matter how many movies I go, oh man, that's a top 5 favorite movie of all time. You know what cannot leave my top 5? This. I can't.
Yeah,
I can't do it. No matter, like, I'm like, you know what? It's not above that. You know, like, well, it's not above Raiders. It's not above Raiders. You know, like, it's
so
just always
special. It's so special. And I think, like, when you think, like, and now, like, this is kind of helping me validate this even more so. It's just like, think about movies of similar genre, similar, like, you mentioned this earlier, too, about how, like, this archetype of character is, like, it's, I don't want to say it's virtually untouched, but it kind of is because no one can quite do this.
No.
The blend of what it took to get this level of just across the board is that exactly right. It's excellence at every stage and step. Everything enhances this movie and makes it better. Like, yes, this movie doesn't go without Harrison Ford, not to the level it did. It doesn't. But the score also, have you ever had a movie where like a character as synonymous with a score as this? Obviously, I'd say Jaws, but that's a fucking shark. We're talking about a human being. I mean, like, there is just such, like, everything about it. The level of thought to the writing and how great of a story. They've paced this well. How many action movies do you watch that are paced as well as this is? The pacing, all of
it is
the
unbelievable. Do you know what time in the movie we are in the map room?
I couldn't even tell you. I don't even know. A timeline is hard to think of.
I bet you it's an hour
actually.
20. I bet you it's hour 20-ish, hour 15.
55. We're 55 minutes and there is an hour left of the movie after that. That's fucking insane. That's insane that you can pace a movie like that. You know,
and nothing about what happens prior feels rushed to get to that.
Nope.
Nothing feels like it drags. There's no parts where you feel like, oh, we spent too much time in this place, spot, setting, whatever. Like,
it's incredible.
It's incredible. It really is.
And like,
that was funny there.
I can't wait to talk about this with Last Crusade. I can't wait to talk about this with Last Crusade because the pacing of that is also
it never leaves your top 5.
Pretty freaking ridiculous.
It is finally now entered the top 5. This was, I don't even know where it was before. I didn't put it above the Fabelmans though. As Spielberg goes, as of right now, I'm fucking with the Fable. I don't know that off pure emotion, off movie. My list is very favorites and just to me personally. I guess everyone's kind of is. And that movie, I was crying. 99% of the movie. No movie's ever done that. Raiders is the closest thing to get me there without making me cry throughout the whole movie. So it's right at 5 for me right now.
I can tell you where you had Raiders in your top 100 project. Do you want to get embarrassed?
Oh God, yeah. Where is it?
Okay, so you have it at 37, which isn't awful.
It's not too bad, but pretty bad for.
No, what's really exciting is what the 2 spots above it are.
Oh God.
Now below it, you gave it high praise. Below it are Dead Poets Society and The Prestige.
2 movies. Okay, I love those movies. I do love those movies. Oh God.
Your 36 is The Book of Eli.
At the time, that makes sense, and then after rewatching it for now, okay. For at the time, it makes sense. Now, yes, I am embarrassed. Okay, what's the other? Is there another one?
The other one was Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't agree. It's not even remotely close. Sorry, no, I'm just such a different movie watcher now.
No, I know. Like that's why I'm excited to eventually revisit a top. Like we've discussed doing a top 250 next time we do it instead of top 100, because it's going to look massively different. Like it's not even going to be close to the top 100 we did, and I'm excited to eventually get around to that.
But yeah, 10s.
But man, 10s across the board. 10s across the board. That's a good fucking movie. That's a certified classic. And I'm interested if it'll be the only one that gets 10s across the board. I think The Last Crusade might give it a run for its money. We'll see.
Dude,
But,
I really like Joe. I think you're gonna come away from that one like it might like I don't know like obviously this one being the first one and what this represented in movie history kind of is a little bit like you can't replicate that with Last Crusade. But I will say there are risks and things done in the third one, like in The Last Crusade. That opening sequence is probably some of my favorite.
Ooh.
Like I can recall that like being something that even as a kid I was like, I don't know if I've seen anything that I liked like that just gripped me the way that did.
Yeah,
The opening sequence of this movie, as good as it was, that one I think it clears it. I'm pretty comfortably.
I'll stay out of the.
I won't lie to you. I think my favorite opening sequence is Temple of Doom. I've said a lot negative about Temple of Doom. I think my favorite first scene is Temple of Doom.
Damn, in the video game, that opening sequence of Temple of Doom, seriously,
yeah.
like
man, why wasn't I part of this as a kid, man? I feel like I've been missing out for so long. But
hey,
no, you're here now. Okay. You're here now. Mm-hmm. You've arrived.
Yeah.
But cool. Man, this was a pleasure, my boys. With that, we will be back next week with Temple of Doom here on the Cinementalists. I was Colton Robertson. I was joined by Joseph George. Thank you very much, homie.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And thank you very much, KBZ Kyler Barnett.
Absolutely.
And remember, it's not the years, it's the mileage.